The following program was funded in part by Toyota, AT&T, Baldwin Richardson Foods, Lincoln Financial Group, Apple, American Airlines. A complete list is available at thehistorymakers.org. Known as the Black Metropolis, Chicago was a beacon for African Americans from across the country, a nurturing place for those who would go on to the world stage. An Evening with the HistoryMakers, Chicago Stories, explores this rich history that is Chicago's legacy. Hosted by actor-producer Harry Lennix and actress-director Regina Taylor.
Hello, Mr. Harry Lennix.
Regina Taylor, you are a sight for sore eyes. Brings me back to that wonderful evening we spent with the HistoryMakers.
Yes, an evening with the HistoryMakers.
That's right. You know, I'm looking at this paper today and seeing all the crime and violence. It reflects a city I don't much recognize.
The news doesn't capture a fraction of what Chicago is, was, or can be.
Let's try to recapture it ourselves a little bit with the great Teresa Griffin bringing us in to that wonderful evening we spent.
Oh, memories may be beautiful and gay. What's too painful to remember? We simply choose to forget. So it's the laughter we will remember. Whenever we remember the way we remember.
I grew up on the mid-south side of Chicago.
204 East 83rd Street.
47th and Greenwood.
51st, just west of Cottage.
3341 South Park, which is now King Drive.
I remember the ice persons up and down the alley.
The knife sharpener used to ride his bicycle there and sharpen your knives. The vegetable man used to come and scream up what he had. You know, got watermelon, corn.
Red as a berry, sweet as a cherry. Wah, 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 watermelon. Boy, you hear that? Daddy, can we get a watermelon?
You can smell Polish sausage and the onions being cooked in the air. Come back to our neighborhood, man, you're gonna smell some fried chicken, some catfish. It was all good, and we all shared.
People go in and out of people's apartment to borrow salt, and it wouldn't necessarily be home. You know, it was just like a big family.
In my neighborhood, if you strayed even too far in terms of certain norms, the cliche is right. People down the street would come and tell your mother.
That's sort of the kind of community where everybody on the block knew when I was supposed to be home. My great-grandmother said, she is not where I expect her to be. You all look for her, and they looked for me.
If you went up to like 94th Street, you could run around in these huge, never developed vacant lots and look for snakes.
Our neighborhood included our church, which was on the corner across the street from our house, and our church had a bowling alley in it.
If you could get on South Park, you felt pretty proud that that was the boulevard of note or of notables.
I almost literally grew up in Madden Park when I was a kid. After school, that's the first place I would go, because that's where you could play baseball, you could play football.
The neighborhoods that I grew up in, the maids and the doctors and the carpenters and the street sweepers, we all lived together. and I would say fairly successfully. I suspect that if there was significant division, it would be division around color.
You lived next door to people who had a lot of money and you didn't have it. But nobody thought about that. It wasn't like there was a separation of class in terms of that.
We lived in what is called a kitchenette. It's a one-room apartment, usually a large apartment, with 7 or 8 rooms in it. One family would stay in the front and had 2 rooms, another family in the middle, and another family at the end. You shared the kitchen, and you shared the bathroom.
We were on public aid when we came to Chicago, and we ate beans 7 days a week. We had beans and rice, navy beans, kidney beans, butter beans.
I remember I went to Mrs. Cockrell's nursery school, in Michigan Boulevard Garden Apartment Nursery School. I have wonderful memories of that. The smell of macaroni and cheese still turns me on.
You know, Dr. Bowman reminds me of something. She talked about the smell of macaroni and cheese. That's Valerie Jarrett's mom, by the way. I remember the smells, the aromas of Funtown. It was a great amusement park on 95th and Stony. You know, for all of its reputation as a city of violence, Regina, Chicago at one point provided great sanctuary for any number of various people. When I grew up, there was a tremendous mix of people. There were athletes, politicians, preachers. One of them is the former governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, and he'll tell you a little bit more.
Good evening. My name is Deval Patrick, and I am a business executive, a lawyer, and the former governor of Massachusetts. But I grew up here in Chicago, right around the corner from the Robert Taylor homes on 54th and Wabash. It was a real community. When I think back to the south side of Chicago when I was coming up, I can still see the horse-drawn wagon filled with straw and watermelons moving down the block in summer. We all kind of had the same story. Everybody was from down south. My grandmother was from Kentucky and had a 3rd grade education. But she had strong middle-class aspirations. She was strict about decorum. My mother was on welfare for a time, but eventually got her GED at night and a job at the post office. She and my father split up when I was 4. He was a jazz musician, a founding member of Sun Ra, who also played with Thelonious Monk, Count Basie, and Duke Ellington. The South Side then was segregated, of course, but felt more self-contained and self-sufficient. There was a mental toughness, probably a survival instinct. I think a lot of people in the neighborhood had that, and they imparted that to us. The good old days weren't always good, but that sense of community counted for something. And that needs to be rebuilt in our neighborhoods, in this and other cities all around the country. Start there, and the solutions to the rest of what ails us are easy.
I grew up in a very tough neighborhood on the west side. A lot of maybe the first generation of gangbangers, you know, where people were organized into teenage gangs, male and female. We didn't go south, you know, because there was this division between the south and the west side. People on the west side don't have nothing to do with people on the south side and vice versa.
And we really didn't want to move from the west side because we had heard so much about the south side that it was bad. But then after we got on the south side, we heard that the west side was bad.
Many of the people who came after World War II settled on the west side, and they were called the country bumpkins, you know, and the tradition of the old settlers was always on the south side in the so-called Black Belt.
There were 2 dominant gangs in the Chicagoland area. They were on the south side, they quote-unquote were the Blackstone Rangers, and on the west side were the Vice Lords.
If they tried to cross Cottage Grove Avenue, the white gangs across Cottage Grove Avenue would beat them up and run them back. So it was always a battle royal, and Cottage Grove was a boundary land.
They were white gangs. I remember some of the names, the Cleveland Aces and the Deuces. I mean, these guys had 14, 15-year-old guys being led by 17, 18-year-old older brothers and sisters, and they were being taught to go to war.
And as I'm getting a hamburger or something, and
It's about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There's a car that pulls up beside me, and there's a guy blindfolded in the back seat, and it's apparently either a gang initiation or they're getting ready to off this guy. And he just pulls up beside me and then keeps going.
Well, my first experience in moving to Darrell Homes was being beaten up by a girl gang after winning a softball game. That was my only experience with girl gangs. During the time that I was living in housing projects, that was a boy thing. It wasn't a girl thing.
I always thought if you're in a gang and you're in the wrong gang, that's a problem. If you're in a gang and you're not doing what they ask you to do, that's a problem. But if you're not in any gang, then you got a chance.
The kids, and that's an accurate description. That's the beginning of young people making their own rules. When it was no longer the adults telling the young people what to do, the young people started telling adults, this is what we're going to do.
My name is Reuben Cannon. I was born in the Brownsville area of Chicago on the South Side. My father worked at the stockyard. When I was 8 years old, he died of a heart attack, leaving my mother with 4 children to raise. We moved to a housing project, the Harry Lennix homes. In the 5th grade, I was very fortunate to have a teacher, a wonderful teacher named Miss Luckett. What I heard Miss Luckett say was that we had found a home in Ickes, and greatness had found a home in me. By the grace of God and the loving support of my family and the community, I was able to walk fearlessly on my paper route. This was a paper route that started at 15th in Michigan and went 25th in Michigan. Along the way, there was Johnson Publishing Company. In fact, it was John Johnson that said to me, Reuben, this is important to learn how to shake a hand firmly and make eye contact. A powerful man taking time to mentor a paper boy. Everything I needed to know to be successful in my first job in Universal Studios in the mailroom, I had learned on my paper route. My mother said to me, Reuben, the greatness in you is not determined by what you do for yourself. It's determined by what you do for others. That's the Chicago spirit I know.
There's no town in the country that had a comparable business growth of over 800 businesses. We were so far ahead of anybody.
Some of the best, greatest black businessmen and most successful ones were in the insurance business.
We had Victory Mutual, we had Benga Bank, we had Spring Liberty, Golden State Insurance Company.
The black community hadn't been discovered by the overall community. They didn't know there was that kind of money being made. You know.
That area along State Street, say from 37th to 35th was like a Black Wall Street. You had a lot of success stories in there.
You looked around, you saw all these great entrepreneurs. John Johnson with Ebony and Jet, Johnson Publishing, George Johnson with Afrosheen and Johnson Products, Tom Burrell, Burrell Advertising, Al Johnson Cadillac.
I use an expression, join Operation Switch to Al Johnson Oldsmobile. And it worked. And people would say, what do you mean by that? And you tell them, from wherever you're buying, switch to Al Johnson Oldsmobile.
We had just all these role models, and in each case, they were folks who had found a particular niche that they were really good at, and had built wonderful businesses around it.
Well, it was unheard of to have a black product in a white chain store. So Kid Baldwin, being the good businessman that he was, says, well, it wouldn't help if I walked in there and said, I want to go in. Why don't you, as a customer, go in? And that's the way Baldwin and Parker House Sausage got into these stores.
Well, I knew about Negro Reader's Digest, so I thought if all these people really want to know this information, maybe I could start a Negro Digest. So when I finally decided to try and put it out, nobody else thought it was a good idea but me. And I didn't have any money. So the question was, what was the best way to get started. And so I thought maybe, see, you have to understand that there had never been a successful commercial black magazine before.
My name is Linda Johnson Rice, the daughter of John and Eunice Johnson. My father came to Chicago with his mother from a rural town called Arkansas City, Arkansas. They came to Chicago, like many before them, in search of better opportunities and a better life. My grandmother, Gertrude, was a proud and strong single mother. She believed in him. And as a result of that, he believed in himself and his abilities. My father sent her a dozen roses every Sunday for her life. He was so very proud of her, and she was so very proud of him. He attended DuSable High School. He met my mother, Eunice, at a dance, and soon after, they fell in love. Here you have my father, a brown-skinned man from rural Arkansas, and my mother, a fair-skinned doctor's daughter from a prominent family in Selma, Alabama. My father would have been the first to tell you that my mother was a tremendous asset to the founding and the building of Johnson Publishing. In fact, she's the one who came up with the name Ebony.
Audrey Smaltz is my name, and fashion is my game. I lived in Chicago for 2 years. I married Dr. Stanley Hughes, and I became the 4th Mrs. Stanley Hughes. But I must admit, I never met a woman here who knew how to live better than Mrs. Johnson. When I first started working for Mrs. Johnson, her passport said 1916. The next year, when I was going to Europe with her, the passport said 1926. People would always ask me how I came up with the lines I used for the Ebony Fashion Fair. And I got them from newspapers, magazines, everywhere. When I would see a line that read well and sounded good, I kept it and I used it for the show. It could be anything at all, as long as it related to the show. But I want to take you back just a moment. Ooh, we had so much fun. Look, there's a Bill Blass suit. It's gray, the shoes are gray, the hat is gray, and the fox sling. And I would say, what to wear on Sunday when you don't get home to Monday? We would only have the most fabulous clothes on the runway, like a gorgeous blue and yellow fox fur from collar to Violi, and I would say to the ladies, you work hard. You deserve it. You owe it to yourself. There was another model, she was so elegant, and she would come out and just stand there, and I'd said, when the invitation reads, don't dress, consider this to wear. And the people would just, because it was drop dead elegance. There was nothing like working for Johnson Publishing. It started a career that I'm still involved with as I enter my 80th year.
All of the major beauty companies in the United States or worldwide actually started here in Chicago. George Johnson was selling his product door to door from his car trunk.
Only place in Little Rock that we could find to stay was in the dormitory at one of the colleges. And that's where we stayed, at the dormitory. I can remember even trying to get gas. The attitude of the gas attendant was terrible.
He was so professional in his manner of doing the research, developing good products, packaged them real extremely well. And I was just naive enough to say, well, if he can do it, I can do it too, you know.
So Johnson Products Company put the money behind it and put Soul Train on TV. And Soul Train was terrific. Soul Train went on October 1971. I think we did around $12 million that year. In 1975, we were doing $37 million.
My name is Eric Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of Baldwin Richardson Foods and the son of George Johnson. George went to the bank to borrow $250 to start his new venture. Confident that he had good credit, he presented his idea, discussed the new product, and showed the results of his early success. The bankers listened, and they informed George that he did indeed have good credit and a promising product. But business is risky, and they were going to do him a favor and not loan him the money, because if they did, he would surely lose his job and be unable to pay them back. The next day, he went to another branch of the same bank, sat down with the loan officer and explained that he wanted to take his family on a vacation to California, and he needed to borrow $250 for the trip. He was approved for the loan that day, and he had the money that he needed to start Johnson Products Company. In 1969, Johnson Products became the first African-American-owned company to ever become publicly traded on a major stock exchange. And in 1964, George Johnson became one of the founders and the chairman of Independence Bank of Chicago.
My name is Terry Gardner. My mother and father founded Soft Sheen Products in 1964. They started the business in the basement of our South Side home. My father started out developing a hair conditioner. UPS would deliver raw materials to our home, and my dad would formulate products and hit the streets to sell them. Our car was always a station wagon or a van because we used the family car to deliver the orders. We assumed everyone was like us, working after school in the factory, greasy clothes all the time. Apparently, my parents were unaware of child labor laws. My three brothers and I started working and paying Social Security when I was 8 years old. After 15 struggling years, Soft Sheen finally became profitable. As a multinational, multi-million-dollar company with over 33 brands in the 1980s, by the late 80s, my parents brought the new Regal Theater back to life. Additionally, my parents were the first Black shareholders, investors in the Chicago Bulls. They helped finance the voters' registration campaign that convinced Harold Washington to run for mayor. He worked to register people to vote, not to tell them who to vote for, but to give people a voice. That voice is what we still need today in everything from our school systems to the policies of our city, state, and nation. As stakeholders, we have to be diligent about letting people know that we are paying attention. As a community, more than ever, we need to use our power.
Hello, I'm Don Jackson. I've been in the television production business as CEO of Central City Productions for over 45 years. I have witnessed Black producers, Black ad agencies, and Black businesses working together to support shows like Soul Train, which started right here in Chicago. Johnson Products Afro Sheen creative ads were developed by Vince Colors, the nation's first Black advertising agency based here in Chicago. Then Tom Burrell of Burrell Advertising was in charge of buying advertising time on Soul Train for Afro Sheen commercials. These were the days when Black businesses supported one another, creating programming first to make a difference and change the world. When we came up with the idea of doing a live, 2-hour television production of the Chicago Bud Billiken Day Parade, all signs were against it. We persevered. The parade proved to be a huge success. With the support of Black agencies, ad agencies, the parade became the highest rated parade on Chicago's television.
But the civil rights movement began years and years ago with people like A. Philip Randolph, with the sit-ins that we had in Chicago in the early 40s.
When I arrived in Chicago in 1946, it wasn't uncommon for you to go to 63rd Street and the sheriff of Cook County was moving out a black family from a house that the black man had paid for.
This was everybody was talking about freedom and being against tyranny, except in your case. The 4 freedoms, does that apply to us? You're still in the Jim Crow outfit.
This is a terrible thing. I've been in many demonstrations all across the South, but I can say that I have never seen, even in Mississippi and Alabama, mobs as hostile and as hate-filled as I've seen here in Chicago.
It was here when we tried to march for open housing, going to a Gates Park, that he was bricked in the head. It was here that you had this just uproaring of white ethnics attacking the drive to march for open housing. It was here that you had a complex political machinery trying to destroy him and destroy our movement.
There was a fire station, and the fire commissioner made some insensitive remark about this woman dying there and accused us of perpetrating this kind of thing. Well, the community went up for grabs.
As I walked the streets in the riots at the request of the mayor until, trying to get people to be calmed down, until one time I said, this is the last time I'm going to do this because, in a sense, you're getting co-opted. You're being asked to quiet people down, and yet the conditions in which people live were not changing.
It was never a shootout, it was a shoot-in. Now, I had known Fred Hampton, and this really touched me because he was a guy that I would see and joke with. I mean, he was about as harmless as you are sitting here. The Panthers were feeding people in the black community.
Ultimately, they set up a plan to murder Fred and myself. And on December the 4th, 1969, they did, in fact, come onto the west side to an apartment where Fred was staying at. I was supposed to have been in that apartment. And they shot that apartment up, killed Fred.
The word came through at that time that Fred had been killed. And, I remember being so stunned.
I'm up there preaching, and I just broke down. I started crying. I couldn't, couldn't deal with it. And one of the 5th graders jumped up and he said, "I am Fred Hampton."
Hanrahan and his deputies raided our churches after these kids, bust out our windows, knocked down our doors with axes, came into the church, took the kids out, and then issued subpoenas to all of us pastors for grand jury for aiding and abetting criminals from the law. That was my baptism by fire into the politics and the political life of Chicago.
The Shy-Lights, Lou Rawls, Shaka Khan, Earth, Wind and Fire.
Chicago is known for its music, from BJ Records to Chess Records, Jerry Butler, Etta James, the Dells.
Let's take a look.
Darling, you send me. Darling, you send me. Oh, you send me. Honest you do, honest you do, honest you. I'm so surprised. First realize that you weren't fooled. when I saw you walking with her. Something deep down in my soul said, cry, girl. Cry, cry. When I saw you talking to her. I would rather go blind, baby. 'Cause I just can't see you walking away from me. Hell, hell, hell. I would rather go blind, baby. 'Cause I just can't see you walking by. It's a house for love. And I've learned that it don't take much to give up. It's a house for love. And I've learned that it don't take much to build it. Thank you, Harry. Oh, I see her face everywhere I go, on the street and even at the picture show. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Say no. Oh, I see her voice as a cold window, and the sweet and music on the radio. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Why, oh, why did you ever leave and go away? Ooh, yeah. Oh, I've been looking to find someone to lean on, but I'm lost. Baby, I'm lost.
You'll never find
Dante Hall, everyone.
as long as you live someone who loves you tender like I do. Oh, I'm not trying to make you stay, baby, but somehow, somewhere, you're gonna
miss my love, babe.
late in the midnight hour, baby.
Miss my love, babe.
When it gets real cold outside, you're gonna miss my love.
Through the fire, through the limit, through the fire, do whatever. Through the fire, to the limit, through the fire, do whatever. Through the fire, to the limit, through the fire, do whatever. Through the fire, to the limit, through the fire, do whatever. Come on. Come and see victory in a land called fantasy. Love and light for you and me to behold till your soul is ecstasy. You will find love and kind that has been in search of you. Many lives has brought you to recognize it's your life now in review. As you stay for the play, fantasy has in store for you. Knowing light will see you through. It's your day, shining day, all your dreams come true.
You know I loved him so dear, but I cut him with my Bilo. Kicked him in his side, stood and laughed while he died. So
There were so many nightclubs. There was the Rich Lounge, That was where Dinah first started singing, in the Rich Lounge. That was where I first met Dinah.
I don't want no sympathy, 'cause I just cut my good man's throat.
We had so many nightclubs. 55th Street must have had full nightclubs everywhere you looked.
You had the jazz joints at 47th and King, or 47th and Drexel, the old Sutherland.
I want to send you over to the Regal. He sent me to see Maynard Ferguson and Miles Davis on the same show. Go in there, and I come out of that place. I wanted to play trumpet in the worst damn way.
Now, Joe Williams was another friend of mine that I helped, because Joe was a very talented guy.
Because it's you I hate to lose. What about settling? How you gonna keep me from meddling?
He had a beautiful voice. Joe always wanted to sing ballads, you know, beautiful stuff.
Baby don't seem to care, her loving cupboard is bare. Nobody loves me.
It's Nat Cole. He was one of my idols. He was a voice that I had listened to from the first time I set foot in Chicago, when I could hear music being played over the loudspeakers. It was Nat Cole.
You made a plaything out of romance. And what were you thinking of? For now you call it madness, but I call it love.
Mahalia had a deep voice, a contralto voice. It sounded like harps was in it.
Great, how sweet.
We was walking on stage, and Mahalia was there rehearsing. I had to go back to the dressing room, and the stage man said, "This one will give me goose pimples." Her voice is so rich. She sound like horn. And she could just go into a beat that would electrify you if you were sitting there, you know, just sitting in her concerts. She'd go into a beat with that big voice, studio work. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Lord, dear Lord, above, God Almighty, God of love.
something that will. All right, help me sing this one then. Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Let me hear you. Come on, baby, don't you wanna go back to that same old place where sweet home Chicago.
If you care about people and you want to bring about change, politics and government go hand in hand. Good politics is good government.
I was in the meeting in our library when the committee indicated that we're going to have a black mayor.
When Harold Washington people had the blue and white buttons, and it was almost like a wave. All of a sudden it became stylish for people to have that button.
Brought the city together. And you know, he said, no one will ever beat me being fair. That he, you know, you couldn't move him from that. And there were those who tried.
Tell me, give him the finger. Yeah, man. Number one.
I think, first of all, the black community should be proud of the image of an African-American mayor and who was running a city with great skill.
To be the mayor of the city of Chicago, you got to be able to be cool.
An African-American had to break the ice and run for president, and it had to be someone who had the nerve and the guts to take the risk. And Jesse was that kind of person.
We are gathered here this week to nominate a candidate and adopt a platform.
This guy went around and he really earned himself a role at the National Convention in the way that he had in 1984.
I often say, you know, there are many books and stories that are written about the Jackson campaign. But I often say, for me, the legacy really is the Jackson campaign was a job training.
When my name goes in nomination, your name goes in nomination. I was born in the slum, but the slum was not born in me. And it wasn't born in you, and you can make it. Wherever you are tonight,
in a way, you could argue that Jesse made it possible for the emergence of someone like Barack Obama.
It is that fundamental belief, I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, that makes this country work. It's what allows us to pursue our individual dreams.
Being in Grant Park the night our first African-American president was elected was just the most incredible moment, because up until that point, I think so many people still thought it was not possible.
Are you prepared to take the oath, Senator?
I am.
I, Barack Hussein Obama.
I, Barack Hussein Obama.
His election didn't just happen, right? We came to that moment because we traveled this path from emancipation all the way through the civil rights movement to the day of his election.
From the election of Oscar DePriest, the first black congressman from the North, to the elections of Mayor Harold Washington and Senator Carol Moseley Braun, from the campaigns of Jesse Jackson and the election of President Barack Obama, Chicago has shaped the political destiny of our nation. Let's take a look.
My name is Brenda Gaines, and I had the honor and privilege of working with the late Mayor Harold Washington as a member of his administration. In September of 1983, I was tapped to head the city's Department of Housing. Later, I became his deputy chief of staff, To have known him is to have loved him. He would walk into a room and people would shout, "Harold, Harold, Harold." And how did he reply? "You want Harold? You got Harold." He could talk to anybody, and he loved to talk to everybody. There will never be another Harold Washington. And while it was significant that he was Chicago's first African-American mayor, what's more important is the lasting effect that he had on Chicago. It is a history and a legacy that makes us all proud.
My name is Valerie Jarrett, a former senior advisor to President Barack Obama. My relationship with Barack and Michelle started when Michelle was referred to me as a candidate to join the staff of Mayor Daley's office. That chance meeting led to a 26-year friendship that has transformed and enriched my life. Little did I know when we met that their commitment to public service would propel them to become the nation's first African-American president and first lady. Chicago's African-American community has always stepped up to push that arc towards justice, advocating for positive change. I grew up in South Kenwood, and I love Chicago's South Side. So does my mom, Barbara Bowman, who also grew up on the South Side and who is here with me tonight. There is something about this city that attracts excellence, and we need to nurture the next generation of leaders. Now let's find our voices. Let's unify. Let's engage with one another. Let's support one another and listen to one another and work together to ensure that our future is a bright one.
I think one thing we proved tonight is that Chicago is much more than the headlines would indicate. It's more than police sirens and bullet holes. It is a town that gave birth to leaders and pioneers who took us from jazz clubs all the way to the White House, from juke joints to city halls, all the way to Hollywood. That's where the history makers come in. And just one night, we were only able to show you a small fraction of the entirety of the archives. But if we support this organization, the history makers, we can be sure to pass on the stories of our legacy from generation to generation. If we do that, we can reclaim our present and take control of the future. Thank you for being with us. See you on the other side. What can I say, therefore, when my child comes home with tears because a playmate has called him black, big-lipped, flat-nosed, or nappy-headed?
What will he think when I dry his tears and whisper, yes, that's true, but no less beautiful and dear? How shall I lift his head, get him to square his shoulders, look his adversaries in the eye?
Confident in the knowledge of his worth, serene under his sable skin, and proud of his beauty.
That he might survive, and survive he must, for who knows?
Perhaps a black child here bears the genius to discover the cure for cancer?
Or to chart the course for exploration of the universe.
Tonight we have witnessed, all of us, our rich history through first-hand accounts.
You see, our history is our future. We must pass the torch. It is time for a new generation of leaders to rise and carry on the traditions that have been laid before you.
Who will be next? Is that you, or you, or you? If you accept this challenge, please stand up. If you accept this challenge, please stand up and say, I do.
Let's move forward together. Thank you to the history makers. Thank you, Chicago. It has been a wonderful evening. Teresa Griffin, take us out with the song.
Things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child. Oh, ooh, child. Hey. I tell you, my child. Someday, yeah, we'll get together and we'll get it under. Yeah. When the world is
this with me? Come on, it won't hurt you. Wave your hands in the air like you just don't care. Come on, or like you care. When the world is much brighter, someday we'll walk together in the beautiful sun, baby. When the world is much brighter, I believe it. Do you believe we'll get together and we'll get it all done? I believe. Do you believe? Come on, right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right
For more information or to order your own copy of An Evening with the HistoryMakers, Chicago Stories, please visit thehistorymakers.org or call 866-914-1900. The preceding program was funded in part by Toyota, AT&T, Baldwin Richardson Foods, Lincoln Financial Group, Apple, American Airlines. A complete list is available at thehistorymakers.org.